Welcome to the Darkstream. VoxDay, voxday.blogspot.com, and Trump Slide 2020. Why am I wearing this shirt? Because although Donald Trump has not yet guaranteed his re-election, he has signaled why he merits that re-election. The other night, I commented that Donald Trump was the best and most conservative president since Calvin Coolidge. That he was a better president and a more conservative president than Ronald Reagan. There's no question of this anymore. None at all. And, his speech today, I encourage you to read the whole thing. You've probably read media reports about it and all that sort of thing. The left is freaking out because they're saying it's an alt-right speech, and it is. There's still some civic nationalist aspects to it, but he was speaking from the heart, and he was really speaking about what we call the alt-west. And so, it was amazing because I was reading the coverage of it in the English newspapers, which were talking about the notes that he was going to strike, and they were talking about the press conference that he had done, and it was pretty awesome because he was poking fun at CNN, at their whole debacle with the blackmail and whatnot, but what was really, if you want to read the speech, go to voxday.blogspot.com. The entire thing, the entire transcript is there. I mean, for a U.S. president to come out and say, we want God, to come out and say that Western civilization needs to be defended and that we need to find the will to defend it if it's going to survive. These are very, very powerful statements to make, and they are statements that no president has dared make for a long, long time. He has made it, and the thing that was so important that he did this in Poland, because Poland is along with Hungary, is the heart of the resistance to the European globalism. Britain is, very important because of Brexit, but Britain has its own struggles. They have their own issues with immigration and whatnot that is not directly related to the European Union issue. They were letting in folks from Pakistan and from the Caribbean long beforehand. Long before the EU got involved and started screwing things up worse. And so, it's very important. And what's interesting to me, and this is what is kind of mind-bending for me. It's absolutely shocking to me. But the fact of the matter is that communism has now proven to be less destructive, less societally and civilizationally destructive than Western liberal capitalism. The Russia is in better shape than the United States now, demographically and intellectually and historically. The terrible. That's right. Somebody just said that communism attacked the body but not the soul. You do know. That's why I said it is mind-bending. Communism was terrible. Communism was horrible. And yet, the liberalism that led to the 1965 Immigration Act and the demoralization, literally demoralization of the United States has turned out to be much, much worse in the long term than communism did. I mean, I've said for a long time that feminism is actually worse than communism. But I don't think that I fully understood, I don't think that I understood the fullness of it. And this is also why, Trump's speech today also should be a sign to the seculars and to the pagans about the signal and unique importance of Christianity in defending the West and helping the West survive. Yes, the social and moral degradation was in part perpetrated by the communists, but we made it worse. We adopted it. You can survive a communist weakened economy. You cannot survive demographics that are destroyed. And so, and that's why, I don't have an issue with the pagans. I'm not criticizing them, not at all. I have a lot of respect for noble and virtuous paganism. But it is not a substitute for Christianity. Paganism, the book right there, the first big green book right there, the Cambridge Medieval History series devotes a big section to that, to the virtuous paganism of Julian, and it was not sufficient. Now, I'm not saying that the current state of Christianity is good at all. I mean, for crying out loud, the Catholic Church is degraded and cucked, and the priests are having gay orgies, in the Vatican. But it's the same cause. It's the same corruption, and it happened at almost the same time. Vatican II is to the Catholic Church as the 1965 Immigration Act is to the United States. And so, so the whole, what needs to be done is that the church needs to be flushed out. The church needs to be restored. The church needs to repent desperately. So, when pagans are slamming the cucks in the church, and when they are slamming the so-called Christian organizations that are aiding and abetting the invasion of Europe, I tell them, you're absolutely right. Help us fix the church. Help us fix Christianity. But don't mistake that for real Christianity. And Trump is obviously aware of this. I mean, I mentioned this in the other night. Maybe some of you heard it. Maybe some of you didn't. But one of the most important things that the God Emperor has done is he is now clearing the way to end the Johnson Amendment, which will permit Christian churches to freely and openly engage in politics again, which they always should have been able to do. If you need this shirt, which you do, because you should be wearing this proudly out in public, go to crypto.fashion. It's one of our Dark Lord designs. We sold a ton of them the day after the election because we had actually printed Trump Slide 2016 shirts and been selling them before it. Yeah, crypto.fashion. Now, I don't think that I was talking to Jack Posobiec, and a Trump slide. It means Trump is going to win the 2020 presidential election in a landslide. Now, that's not guaranteed yet because he still has to do one more. Jack is actually out here. That's funny. I was talking to the brilliant and handsome Jack Posobiec, who was enlightening me. Anyhow, we were talking, and he said that the one thing that needed to be done was that Trump needs to have that picture taken with the yellow construction hat on and the shovel building the wall. What Trump needs to do to ensure his election is he needs to build the wall. It doesn't need to be built by 2020, but it needs to be getting built. And I believe he's going to do it because Trump has been the best president about keeping his promises, and I find it very, very difficult to imagine that he would be so foolish as to go back on that promise. I remember it. So certainly, and in fact, just so you know, I did meet Donald Trump once, and he actually sat behind me, like literally right behind my shoulder, in George Bush's private suite at the Republican National Convention when George Bush was nominated in the 1988 presidential election. I am positive, absolutely positive, that he remembers "Read my lips, no new taxes." And he remembers George Bush going back on that promise and how that crushed him. That's why he lost to Bill Clinton. The only reason Bill Clinton wasn't even one of the top Democratic candidates. He only had the chance because all the serious Democratic candidates thought that Bush was a certain winner. Clinton threw his hat in the ring, and then Bush was dumb enough to go back on his primary promise. And Ross Perot didn't help either. But if Bush had not gone back on that promise, he would have won. And so I think that the Donald Trump that we're seeing standing in Poland, telling off the globalists, telling off the EU elite, and standing there in front of cheering white Christian Poles and telling them we want God. This is not a man who is likely to go back on his primary promise of building a wall. And the thing is, Trump is a very flawed man. He knows he's a very flawed man. He's divorced. He's committed adultery. He's probably done all sorts of things that he shouldn't have done, right? But here's the thing. What type of man does God usually use? What type of man was the Apostle Paul? What type of man was King David? What type of man were some of the founding fathers? What type of man was Winston Churchill? Churchill was a joke. He was a joke in England for years. So you cannot count out Donald Trump simply because he used to be a shallow playboy. When I think about Donald Trump, what I think of the most is the Shakespearean plays about Henry V. The Henry V, he started out as a playboy, a shallow, superficial figure who just wanted to run around with Falstaff and drink, right? And yet he matured, he grew up, and then he turned into he turned into a victorious, conquering king. And so, I don't know whether he grew up. I don't know whether he got serious. I don't know, whether he found Jesus. I don't know what. I don't know him. But what I do know is that he is someone who speaks with power. He is someone who speaks with some of the fire of the convert. And if you look at, somebody commented on his children. One of the things that really caught my attention during the campaign was the way that all of his children rallied to his side. My favorite figure of all that group is Donald Trump Jr. I mean, I strongly suspect he is like the alt-right war god. He is potentially, he is potentially Thomas Watson Jr. to Trump's Thomas Watson. And so, I'm excited about what Donald Trump Jr. might become someday. So, anyhow, I want to comment. I'm going to segue here, and I want to comment on something because I was planning to talk about something else, and then I had to talk about the speech because it was such a great speech. How could you not talk about it? How could you ignore it? And so, I was talking to a guy today, and just in case he happens to tune in or be tuning in, I'm just using this as an inspiration and example. It's not a criticism. But one thing I've noticed about, let me back up it for a second. I put a post up today, and it was about the debacle of a tranny SJW who got hired to do social justice crap at GitHub. And what was remarkable to me, and then after posting that, and after a conversation with somebody who is of the right, and talking about some stuff that we could work on together, some projects that are underway, some of which you know about, what struck me was the huge chasm, the polar opposite of people on the left and people on the right, and how we approach supporting our ideals and doing our jobs. Now, on the left, the SJW completely sacrifices the interests of his company and the interest of the job he's doing, the interest of his project. He completely sacrifices them on behalf of his social justice ideals and interests. Okay? Now, that's terrible. It's a terrible thing to do. We all know that. But here's the problem with what the right does. The right does not lift, too many of us do not lift our finger in our own jobs on behalf of our ideals. Too many of us don't look for opportunities to move our side forward. Too many of us do nothing to help others on our side and help advance them and help move them forward. We on the right tend to be very bad about this. And so we're terrified, but it's not just about not getting fired, it's about not looking for opportunities that are win-win. There are plenty of opportunities where you can say, no, but you won't. I'm talking about situations where there's no chance of getting fired. It doesn't matter what you're talking about, whether you're talking about, actually, I don't want to get into any details. But the point is, if you're on the right, what I would encourage you to do is to look for opportunities that are win-win. You know, don't hire, I mean, it goes well beyond don't hire an SJW. And I'm not saying that, look, you don't need to tell me being publicly ID'd as alt-right can get you fired. I wrote the book SJWs Always Lie. I literally wrote the book on that. So I'm aware of that. I am not talking about running around, you know, chanting, I love Mike Cernovich, you know, I love Milo. I'm not talking about that. I am talking about doing things that you can do, doing things that are possible for you to do, looking for win-wins. You know, like I'll give you an example. Castalia House publishes books. Now, you know, we could simply focus on being completely apolitical. We could focus on, we could just say, no, we don't, you know, we already have enough controversy because we publish me. But we don't do that. We actively look for people that we can help elevate. Tara McCarthy. Some of you know Tara McCarthy. You know, she's great. She's a strong female white nationalist. We want to help raise her profile. She's smart, and so I contacted her on Twitter and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about writing a book?" She said, "Yeah, actually, I have some ideas." I said, "Great, you know, send it over to me." She sent an outline. I shot back some suggestions, and then I really liked what she was saying, and so we signed her to a book contract. There are other people that we are doing similar things with, you know, and it goes both ways. You know, Stefan Molyneux called me up and said, "Hey, when's your book coming out? Let me know. We want to have you on when your book comes out because we want to help you with that." That's how you do it. That's how you do it. You look for opportunity. Mike Cernovich is great at this. Mike Cernovich says every day he tries to think of one person that he can help, even if it's just as simple as doing a retweet. You know, when you've got 300,000 followers, a retweet is a big deal. And so that's what I'm saying is look for the opportunities to help people on the right. Larry's great. Larry does book bombs. In fact, Larry is doing one on behalf of one of our authors later this month. I didn't ask him. I didn't ask him to do it. You know, he came up with that on his own. Why? Because he wants to help people on his side. I want to help people on our side. You know, if we can do it, that's what we're going to do. That's why we are, you know, that's why we're looking to publish some of those folks. That's why we're looking to help, you know, build up people. I was just talking to an indie author, and I said, "Hey, look, you know, we've got this mailing list. We're going to do a mailing in July." The mic won't help. Thank you, but I already have a mic. It didn't work. This is a iPad issue. Anyhow, you know, so we contacted them and said, "Hey, look, we're going to be doing this mailing. Do you have anything that you want us to mention to our subscribers? Because we're already sending this mailing out. You know, it doesn't hurt us to have one more little item on there. So why not help, you know, and look to help others. Look to build up others. This is how we win. This is how we're successful. Mike is not all about Mike. I can testify to that personally. You know, you need to understand that. I don't think there's much. I'll talk about the whole cooperation between alt-right and alt-light at some other point. It is possible, but people need to stop dancing for the media. The media, you read that Atlantic article that came out today, you read the New York Times, whatever, they love to try to push that stuff. Okay? So, I'm not averse to people criticizing each other. Criticism is good. But, when you're dealing with high-profile people, it's often best if you criticize each other directly, personally, privately. I've gotten things wrong before, and Milo called me up and said, dude, you stepped in it. Don't do that. Here's why. Mike, we got together for dinner in Spain one night, and Mike said, dude, stop being such an upper middle class pussy. Learn to let people help you. You don't have to do everything by yourself. If somebody wants to give you money to help you do something, that's okay. It's okay to accept it. He was right. Now, without Mike, we would not have Infogalactic. That's a direct result of my conversation with Mike. Okay? And he wasn't talking about himself. He wasn't selling himself. He's trying to help me. And so, you need to remember you can't judge these guys by what you see on Twitter. Most of them are smarter. Most of them have more depth than you might think. Same thing's true of Richard Spencer. He's got more depth than people give him credit for. So, and a lot of this stuff is, here's the thing. The reality is the more the media tries to tear us apart, the less we're going to let them, the less we're going to spar. And so, now, we have differences of opinion. I'm not worried that when, Mike tends to be much more focused on brand and that kind of stuff than I am. So, he's like, well, I think the alt-right is a negative brand. Maybe he's right. My point is, I don't care about the brand. For me, the alt-right is a political philosophy, and it makes no difference whether people think it's, spiffy or not so spiffy. It makes, that commenter is right. It's about saving the West, not any one person. Well, I am a bit arrogant in my own milieu. I'm actually very humble when I am in areas outside of that. So, anyhow, it's kind of funny. One of my readers finally pointed out to someone who said that I think I'm always right. They said, you have it exactly backwards. You think he thinks he's always right because if he doesn't know anything about the subject, he just will not talk about it. There's plenty of things that I know nothing about. I keep my mouth shut. So, anyhow, but let's go back to the God Emperor. We are fortunate. We are fortunate to have someone who is so bold and so willing to stand there in the gap, not just for Americans, but for the West. He made that clear today. For me, I was actually kind of touched when he said during that speech in the campaign, I stand here and I take these, I gladly take these arrows for you. And what he was saying is, I am willing to stand up here and take the heat for the American people. And what he did today is he said he's willing to do the same thing for the West because he believes that that's what God has called him to do. And, you know, if there's one thing, you know, I said what you can do for the right. What can you do for the right? Look for win-win situations. Look to build people up. Look to help people. But what can you do for the God Emperor? Pray for him. You need, I need, we need to pray for him. Because he is under attack like few men have ever known. He is hated in a way like few men have ever been hated. Don't worry about him. He's not worried about him. But what you should do is you should pray for him. And you should speak out. Don't be afraid. You know, if you have a Trump slide shirt, wear it. If you have another, you know, don't do the whole embarrassed, well, I kind of disagree and dun-ta-dun-ta-dun-ta-dun. Not that. He is standing up for the West. Stand up for him. That's all I have tonight. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you're interested in the Trump slide shirts, they're at Crypto Fashion. And I think it's going to be very interesting very soon. I don't know what's going to come of this Putin meeting, but I bet something very interesting is going to come from it soon as well. Have a good evening.